sometimes couples feel are miles apart, as you
Mhm.
you stay in your marriage for 10, 15, 20 years and you keep appealing to the other person to understand what it is you're trying to say. You want them to hear you. You want them to maybe make some adjustments. And then you come to a point where you think, well, they're not even making that adjustment. I must not matter to them. They
Mm,
don't value me. And we begin to really be disappointed. And we think, you know what, maybe I made a mistake in marrying this person. We
mhm,
definitely are roommates more than we are lovers. And there is this sense that, we've got so much distance between us now that it's kind of like they're on one continent and I'm on another.
mm,
But what if, in fact, we're inches apart, not miles apart? And
mhm.
that's where these light bulb moments come in.
You're listening to Java with Jen, and I'm your host, Jenalise Samuel. On this show, I bring the simplicity of hearing God's voice into everyday life in a no nonsense, authentic, and super practical way. With coffee in hand and real life in our faces, let's do this. Thanks so much for coming back to another episode here at Java with Jen. I'm excited for the topic we have today, and more specifically, the guest that we have today, Mr. Emerson Eggerichs, known for his book, Love and Respect. He and his wife are marriage ministers and have been doing that for a very long time. They were pastors before that, but we're actually not discussing that book. We're discussing one of his newest ones, which is called Lightbulb Moments, and is all around lightbulb moments that people that they've worked with have had in the process of working with them, and those little light bulb moments that were pivot points for their marriage. And so, Emerson, it's a great day to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So why don't you take us into this? I think most people know you clearly for love and respect. I was telling you before that I feel like I know that phrase love and respect is it's common household language, and most people understand that concept, or at least people I encounter. And so you guys really laid a solid foundation and were effective at bringing that message to the body. But Lightbulb Moments is your newest work, and tell us what brought you to this book. It sounds really interesting.
No, good question. Sarah and I, we've been married since 1973. And as you mentioned, we have been doing our Love and Respect marriage conferences since 1999.
Wow.
And over the years, people email us. I've got about 400,000 emails. People in those emails, not infrequently, said, we had a light bulb moment at the conference. We had a light bulb moment when we were reading your book, Love and Respect. And so I have always appreciated that. They say we had an aha insight, we had a eureka moment kind of thing. And so I went back through and collected those testimonies of individuals who expressed it in that way to kind of see what were the patterns, what were the things that people were saying. Even during our book signing lines, we have a 2-day conference. We averaged about 1,800 for those 2 days. We just did one in Chino Hills not a while back in California. 2,400 showed up for that. And so people have been very responsive to this message.
Mm,
And then during the book signing, they will say, why hasn't anybody told us this? We've been married 30 years and no one told us this. So you begin
mm,
to realize that there are these insights that can really enable people to pivot quite quickly. In fact, sometimes couples feel are miles apart, as you
mhm,
you stay in your marriage for 10, 15, 20 years and you keep appealing to the other person to understand what it is you're trying to say. You want them to hear you. You want them to maybe make some adjustments. And then you come to a point where you think, well, they're not even making that adjustment. I must not matter to them. They
mm,
don't value me. And we begin to really be disappointed. And we think, you know what, maybe I made a mistake in marrying this person. We
mhm,
definitely are roommates more than we are lovers. And there is this sense that, we've got so much distance between us now that it's kind of like they're on one continent and I'm on another.
mm,
But what if, in fact, we're inches apart, not miles apart? And
mhm,
that's where these light bulb moments come in because suddenly people see things in a way, wow, I was interpreting it this way when really it was to be seen that way. And maybe my spouse didn't have ill will. Maybe they had goodwill, but they were just looking at it through a pink and blue lens. And once you decode what it is that they really were trying to do, it
mm.
can really be liberating.
Yeah, that's so good. So, what is your, before we dive into the nitty gritty and get some of those light bulb moments unpacked for us, what is your vision? What is your hope for people and marriages? You guys have been in this marriage space for a long time. I would imagine that the rise of technology and screen time and all of that has impacted marriages. Have you guys seen a big change, a big shift, or do you feel like the same problems have been the same problems throughout time?
Well, based on what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 7, verses 33 and 34, he says the husband is concerned about how to please his wife,
Mm.
and the wife is concerned about how to please her husband. And that was written in the first century. And the question is, does that come from the heart of God? And if so, then we're not married to a perfect person, but that doesn't mean that each gets up early in the morning to storyboard ways to irritate each other and to annoy each other so that at the end of the day, we can say, they really aren't concerned about me. They really don't want to please me. But that tends to be the way we profile it after years of marriage, that if you
Mhm.
were really concerned about me, if you really wanted to please me, I'm not trying to be selfish here. Why can't you be more responsive to my appeal to you to be more understanding? And that's a legitimate concern. So Sarah and
Mhm.
I take the position that I don't believe that there's ill will. I don't believe that there's evil intent. That doesn't mean we don't get nasty at times. And
Mhm.
certainly there are violent people out there. My dad attempted to strangle my mother to death when I was 2.5. I witnessed that. I understand
Mhm.
rage issues. I understand physical separation, which my mom did for 5 years. My frame of reference isn't that category. My frame of reference,
Okay.
two people have basic goodwill, but they don't like each other right now. And so
Mhm.
what's going on? Our main motif is I believe there's misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Honest misunderstanding. It isn't the result of the other person intending to do wrong. They
Mhm.
truly want to please the other, but they don't choose those ways that the other really wants them to choose, and that becomes the conflict. And we have
Yeah.
illustrations of how that plays out, but I think in answer to your question, it is this honest misunderstanding among two people with basic goodwill. When dated Sarah, I didn't say to her, I hate you and you hate me, so let's get married.
True. True. And that brings a point that I have seen many times when my husband and I are in conflict, that if I can remind him, um because he grew up in an environment that was just full of conflict. And I did not. So for me, it was like really bringing to him, like, hey, we're on the same team. I'm in your corner. I'm for you. It's not you and me against each other. It's you and me should be against whatever the problem or the misunderstanding is. And then I heard Lisa Bevere say something very similar on a podcast just recently. Do you feel like that's one of the biggest fundamental problems that I mean, it sounds like that's what you're describing, but is that one of the biggest problems that marriages face? If people can just realize they're on the same team, it's them together against the problem, that would fix a lot of struggle.
That's one of the chapters in Lightbulb Moments. Same team, same goal, different routes, different place,
Mm,
as we say. And it deals with this issue of living in harmony. And
mhm.
one of the points that we make there, it's important during these heated fellowship moments that we remind each other we are allies, not enemies. We are friends, not foes. We're on the same team. We're not opponents. And we have to remind each other of that, even though we have at the same time the freedom to say, you don't like me right now, and I don't like you, but we are on the same team. And that is very important to give voice to that as you're doing, because it can cause the other person to be a little bit more restful and not see this as a fight. Yes, it's an excellent insight.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so why don't you take us, since we already unpacked one accidentally, take us into some of these light bulb moments. Maybe what's your favorite, or what's one that has like a real impactful story behind it that really touched you when you received it?
Well, we come down through the book, and there are 12 chapters, and there are three major sections. There are issues of faith, the upward component, as I call it, and then you have the outward, which is skill, and then you have the inward, which is wisdom. And so the book revolves around those three dimensions. And the challenge always is for each person to think, well, where am I in this situation? Do I need a little bit more faith here? Do I need a little bit
Mm,
more skill? Do I need to have a little bit more self understanding? And so it's really kind of choose your own adventure. And that's where it becomes exciting. One of the statements that we make that is that light bulb moment, not
mhm,
wrong, just different shades of right.
mhm,
Not wrong, just different shades of right. Or is my value, my worth going to be God given or spouse driven? Is it going to
mhm,
be God given or spouse driven. So each of these chapters has hopefully a catchy phrase. Am I motivating my spouse or am I manipulating them? Am I going to
Mhm.
live by the holy word or am I going to live by Hollywood? Um, do we come to a point where we say, my response is my responsibility? And these are axioms, for instance, that have been very helpful to people. And so we have a whole set of phrases in the book, Lightbulb Moments, that
Mhm.
each person can look at that table of contents and say, wow, I think that's the one I kind of want to land on.
Yeah, that's so good. Why don't you lean into the one that's motivation versus manipulation? Because I feel like between men and women, that those lines can get really blurry.
Correct. That's right. And one of the points that we make, if it's true that in our deepest core, we truly need
Mhm.
love and respect, God's hardwired us to need that. We definitely need each other. 1 Corinthians 7 is telling us very clearly, and that chapter deals with marriage. 1 Corinthians 13 is not about marriage. 1 Corinthians 7 is about marriage. And Paul said every man must have his own wife, every woman must have her own husband, unless you have the gift of celibacy. God
Mhm.
intends for you to be married because you need the other person. I need you, you need me. God calls me to have your back, calls you to have my back. And that is a very important realization that we come to. This idea that I can be strong and independent of you is not a biblical idea. We can be needy, that's too much, but there is
Yeah.
a basic need that I have. And I take the position that I need love and respect. Sarah needs love and respect. But what happens in conflict with each other and we feel the other person isn't meeting that need, we tend to negatively react.
Mhm.
We don't positively react when we feel that our need is being deprived. And there's a tendency to get defensive and to react negatively in
Mhm.
order to motivate the other person to be positive. And that's an oddity, isn't it? That
It is.
that I am now feeling like my need is being deprived and I'm defensive and I negatively react. Why? Because I'm trying to motivate them to awaken me to my deeper need. And I'm trying to motivate them to be
Mhm.
positive based on me being negative with them. It's kind of like we're waiting for our spouse to come running into the house after 30 years of marriage and they exclaim, I now get it. I now get it. Get what? I now know why you've been negative for 30 years. Why? To motivate me to be positive. How did I miss it? So we expect the other person to decode that. But what happens, we're really genuinely trying to motivate them. Our
Mhm.
hearts are in the right place, but it becomes manipulation. You cannot use unholy means to achieve worthy ends. It's
Mhm.
not pleasing to Christ. So, how do we distinguish manipulation from motivation? True
Mhm.
motivation comes to this realization. How is it that God wants me to influence the spirit of my spouse? How is it that God wants me to energize the spirit of my spouse? How
Mhm.
is it that the Lord wants me to do this in a way that is honoring to Him? And in that chapter, we unpack how to do that and distinguish between manipulation and motivation. And part of it is one, I have to make a decision. Am I going to be a loving individual, even if Sarah comes across to me as disrespectful? Or am I going to pull away and be unloving to motivate her to be respectful? And then that's
Mhm.
when I cross that line, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, what I appreciate from what I've been seeing of your content and have, seen in your book as well, it seems that there's a very strong focus, not strong in a bad way, but just a strong, clear emphasis on self responsibility. So, even what you just described, the emphasis there is on us recognizing, am I leaning into manipulation in the way that I'm communicating what my needs are? Is that correct?
Well, certainly each of us has to step back and ask ourselves, "I- is it getting through to the other person?
Yeah.
And maybe we're married to Hitler's distant cousin. You know, I mean, I can't answer that for you and each person out there, but typically, if the other person is deflating, if they're shutting down, if they're getting defensive, I have to step back and ask myself, how am I coming across? And one of the challenges always is to be self aware that
Mm,
maybe the way in which I'm doing this isn't really proving helpful to them. But we lose confidence that we have the power to influence our spouse. This is where we become victims. We
mhm,
continue to appeal to them in the way that we would as a woman toward other women. You know, if your best girlfriend or your sister, you say, you know, if you really come at them and vent, they're going to say, "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Please
mhm.
forgive me. Had no idea." Women feel very natural and comfortable in the ocean of emotion. All the research points this out. So she's kind of expecting her husband to say, "Oh, I had no idea. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. What can I do to correct this? But what
Yeah.
he does is he goes on the defensive because
Mhm.
he's not hearing the message of, hey, I have a need that only you can meet. Instead, he's hearing, you're a failure. You're not good enough. And I'm going to point this out to you again that you need a change, and I'm unhappy because of you. So, how do we do this dance differently based on our pink and blue views?
That's so good. And it is so important. And again, I want to point out what Mr. Emerson said in the beginning, which what we're discussing today is not for those outlier situations where there's abuse present and you're dealing with someone who doesn't function like a normal, good hearted person. This is for people who are married to good people that really want to do better. I had posted on Facebook asking people if they had any questions for you for this episode. And one person mentioned, and she was referencing the Love and Respect book, but one person mentioned, and um, which tells me, I mean, people can do this with anything. They do it with the word of God as well. But they were like, I feel like the hard lines of always love, always respect can enable narcissistic abuse, manipulation, and abusive situations when there's not the room for the outlier situations. And so I think can weaponize scripture as well, so it's not that there was an error in the message as much as it was understanding where and how to apply it. And so do you feel like these 12 light bulb moments, do these apply for people that are in those outlier situations? Are they still going to be able to, find help with these books, or would you direct them another direction to another resource?
Well, I don't know the specifics of that situation. What I do say is that there is physical abuse, as I referenced before, with my own dad and my mom in those situations. So I have a very tenderness. I am what I call a wounded healer because of that. I
Mhm.
have these wounds, and I went to military school for 5 years, from eighth grade to 12th grade, due to family problems. There are all kinds of issues that I talk about. I spoke to 14,000 students at Liberty University about being the wounded healer. So I'm very empathetic toward that. Part of my challenge always is that it's so easy to interpret our spouse as abusive when that may not be the case at all. So, for
Mhm.
instance, um, there was a syndicated radio program that said, "Oh, Dr. Eggerichs, we wish you were here last week. We did a whole week on silent abuse." And I said, "Silent abuse?" And they said, "Yes." Is that where the husband withdraws and stonewalls and goes quiet? Yes, that's abuse. Well, now let's just be cautious here. The research at the University of Washington studied 2,000 couples for 20 years. And they found that and they had these husbands and wives in this laboratory, and they had them wired for beats per minute, physiological, studying the heartbeats. They had clinicians there, they had linguists there, they had clinical psychologists there, they were videotaping. And this went on for 20 years, 2,000 couples. And they said, we now know the two key ingredients for successful marriages. A book was written, Why Marriages Succeed or Fail. And they said it's love and respect. So,
Mm.
first of all, love and respect is the basis for successful marriages.
Yeah.
But secondly, they said during conflict, for instance, 85% of those who withdraw and stonewall is the husband, is the male,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And they asked the women, what do you feel when he withdraws and stonewalls? And it was such a common response that they made it a descriptor called active hostility. She said, they said, it just feels like he hates me. Because she could not imagine shutting down over what she perceived as a minor criticism at
Mhm.
worst. These 2,000 couples, the 2,000 women, it's an active hostility. He hates me. He doesn't love me, right?
Yeah.
And so it was such a common response. Now, you could say then that's abuse. But what they realized is that physiologically, the reason that he was shutting down, his heartbeats were getting to 99 beats per minute. She
Mm.
was coming at him because they said 85% of those women were criticizing and complaining, criticizing, complaining, criticizing, complaining. They knew that wasn't politically correct, but the linguist had said they're criticizing and they're complaining. They're criticizing and complaining. So then at a certain point, his heartbeats get to 99 beats per minute. That was what was going on physiologically. That's warrior mode. That's
Yeah.
what he goes into if someone threatens your life, Jen. Your husband's going to die immediately because his insulin, adrenaline, everything goes to protect you. So he goes
Mhm.
into warrior mode. But in a heated moment with his wife, he doesn't want to fight. So there's got to be flight because he's got to calm himself down. So
Mm.
one of the things I've learned, Pat Riley had me come speak to the Miami Heat, and he and I spent hour after hour talking about men are motivated by honor. They're motivated by honor.
Mhm.
And so my question is, in my world among men, if we get into a heated moment, what do we say? Drop it, forget it. And if we're really getting upset with each other, we just walk away. Why? Because the relationship is more important than this stupid issue that we're arguing about. So
Ah,
I always like to ask people, so in a heated moment with husband and wife, is it an act of hostility or is it an act of honor?
mhm.
And every woman out there who has sons, I hope she is a little empathetic toward her boy. My belief is that he's going to be trying to do, he doesn't even consciously know what he's doing. He just knows he's not trying to be unloving. He's
Uh-huh.
not trying to be hateful. And if he
Yeah.
withdraws, and he's trying to do what he thinks is the honorable thing to de escalate a conflict that to him isn't all that important. Now,
Mm,
that doesn't mean that her feelings are irrelevant. Her feelings are very important. Just as I say to a guy, hey, you might propose breaking for 15 minutes and then coming back for 15 minutes to talk about the issue. Give that to her as a gift. Well, after 15 minutes, I feel fine, so I want to drop and forget it. No, 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 no. She gives you the gift of 15 minutes to calm down. You give
mhm.
her the gift of 15 minutes of addressing that issue. So now,
Mhm.
circling back to the point, the question on the table is that withdrawal and stonewalling abuse? There
Mhm.
are thousands of people who would say that's abusive. And my comment is no, I think that's just a misunderstanding. Jesus
Mhm.
Christ said in Matthew 19:4, he who, have you not read, he who made them from the beginning made them male and female. And it's very important that we decode what's really going on rather
Mhm.
than interpreting our spouse through our own feelings and sentiments. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there aren't evil-willed people out there, but it is a sad day when a husband is doing the honorable thing and he's viewed as abusive. And so every husband and wife need to understand that God by design has
Mhm.
created tension in the best of marriages. And he expects a husband and wife who are seeking his face, who are concerned to please the other, 1 Corinthians 7:33, to understand there's going to be these special challenges, tensions, and troubles on Tuesday night in the bedroom. And if you frame all of that to mean if we really loved each other, we wouldn't have these conflicts, that is a Hollywood perspective, not a Hollywood perspective.
Mhm.
And that there isn't this judgment that we should be bringing against the other person because they have a different preference or
Right.
they have a different need on the continuum of the emotional and sexual. We are going to land in different places on the continuum. So how do we deal with that without judging the other with contempt? And that's
Mhm.
part of my campaign to help people navigate these real conflicts that are going to arise on Tuesday night.
That's so good. You had mentioned also about the importance of understanding, and you've mentioned it a few times. And I have seen whether in all relationships, really. Growing up, my family was very understanding. There was a climate of understanding, so I felt very safe to express myself and work out conflict. And it was just a very safe environment growing up. And then as a parent, I have seen, and even as a youth pastor, I found that our students would not talk to their parents. And their excuse for not talking to their parents was, well, they just don't understand. And then I found in marriage, like if there's not understanding for a husband who has an understanding wife, she's from the Lord, right? And then also scripture tells husbands to treat their wives in an understanding way. So we see this concept throughout scripture, yet I
Mhm.
feel like it's actually really under emphasized is the power and the importance of understanding in a relationship. So talk a little bit about that. And does that connect to any of your light bulb moments in your book as well?
Absolutely. You reference 1 Peter 3:7. Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, since she's a woman, precisely because of her gender. And then he adds at the very end, so that your prayers are not hindered. And that isn't the husband and wife praying together, that's the husband's prayer.
Mm,
And so I say to men, the Lord in effect is saying, if you don't, as the Christ figure, live with her in an understanding way and hear her heart and listen to her and
mhm,
really come to grips with what she's feeling, thinking, without passing judgment on her as in a condescending way, then my position is probably the Lord, the Christ himself, is not going to listen to you when you pray to him and talk to
mhm,
him. So it's crucial that we hear what Peter is saying. And that's why I'm on this campaign. I don't believe often it's I said to guys, your wife criticizes and complaining because she cares.
mhm,
That one of the other sides of that is guys who, well, it's contempt. No, it's not an act of contempt. It's an act of care. You and I feel that it's an act of contempt, but we got to decode, particularly if God calls us to be understanding of her. And as a vulnerable person here, you're not going to be the worse for the wear if you give her some more time, listen to it a little bit longer. Don't personalize everything she's saying, and watch what happens in your prayer life the next day if you
mhm,
are obedient to 1 Peter 3:7. But it'd be so easy for a husband to say, she just wants to wear the pants, she's got issues, and become a profiling husband. This woman has mental problems, she has emotional meltdowns, all this profiling, which
Mm.
every woman out there knows would be a misrepresentation of who she is in her deepest heart. But
Yeah.
women are doing that toward your future son. Your sons, your daughter-in-law is gonna do that toward your son, and we've gotta put a stop to this. We've gotta
Mm.
understand, to your point, what's really going on in the soul of this person, and are there ways we can get through to them? And the problem is it's counterintuitive and countercultural sometimes. The very appeal that women are making isn't what's gonna get through to the husband. There's a
Mm.
different way you've got to approach, and what you think is gonna work with that woman to teach her to respect you by just going quiet for 2 days is completely ineffective. It's
Yeah.
abandonment. Shawnee Feldhahn's research points out that Christian women are living in this ongoing anxiety that they're 3 conversations away from hearing their husbands say to them, "I don't love you, never have loved you, have no intentions of
Mm.
loving you, and I'm leaving you." The fear of abandonment, the fear of being unloved. So I say to a man, if you're just completely ignoring her and not resolving, do you realize the panic that you're putting her in? And you need
Mhm.
to be more of a servant and hear her heart and understand her. But the same appeal I make to women toward the man. Right
Mhm.
now, the feminist culture, the pink view, dominates the way relationships are going, and women will talk among each other. Men tend not to talk to each other unless they're in crisis, because most men will say, Harry, I got enough problems with myself. I don't need to hear yours.
Yeah.
So, but it's also the honor code. Men are not bad mouthing their wives to other men. We don't really appreciate that. But
Yeah.
women have given full license in the church just to talk, talk, talk about how bad their husbands are. And your
Mhm.
daughter-in-law is going to do that toward your precious baby boy. So we need godly women like you to say, we need to call a time out here. And maybe
Mhm.
there is an honest misunderstanding. Maybe
Yeah.
there's not ill will. Maybe if we give this a little more time, the longing of our hearts to have that intimate relationship can come about, and maybe it's not as bad as you think. The continents you think you're apart, the miles you think you're apart, maybe you're just a few inches apart.
Yeah, that's so good. Why don't we get into the skill? You talked about, how your book is in sections and there's a skill section. Um, I'm over here thinking, I know that for women and men, we operate so differently and it's so intuitive, it's so involuntary that many times it's just more about stopping the train that's already at full speed and trying to figure out how to reorient in order to not blow a situation into chaos. And so, how can women treat their husbands like, and I mean, get really practical here. What are some things that women can do to bring a spirit of understanding to her husband, especially when she's not feeling heard? I know my mom taught us growing up, always, it was a little phrase she would say, always seek to understand and then be understood.
Mm.
She would always use that. So that kind of guided my conflict resolution parameters. But most people I have come to learn aren't taught that way. And so, what are some skills around cultivating understanding, specifically women towards their husbands?
If Greece has been on your bucket list, then you need to sit up and listen because here's how you can make it happen. Come with me and 11 other podcast listeners to Greece for the adventure of a lifetime. Picture cobblestone streets in Athens, the Acropolis rising against the sunset sky, walking the ancient roads of Corinth where Paul planted the Church of Corinth. We're going to hike a castle and capture so many stunning Santorini photos that you will treasure forever. This trip will be equal parts adventure and downtime. And what makes it so unique is we're also going to carve out time for prayer, prophetic ministry, and real refreshing encounters with the Lord. You're going to come home so refreshed, body, soul, and spirit. But spots are very limited. I'm only taking 12. So if you're interested in coming, your spot won't wait. So click the link in the show notes and fill out your application today. Can't wait to go to Greece with you.
Well, I think on that very point, it's an excellent one. And this has been around, the 7 habits of highly effective people. One of those great Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then to be understood, to your mother's point. And this is a great insight. But again, if we feel like we're the vulnerable victim here, and we feel that we're really the one that does understand, and now we're giving voice so that they can understand me, we may need to back up to your point. But some practical skills that need to be understood from a woman to a man, for instance, if this is where she knows her heart's in the right place. So her feelings have been hurt. She wants to communicate to him, you hurt my feelings. I want you to understand me. I want you to see me. I want you to hear me. If you would
Mhm.
just say you're sorry, I will say I'm sorry too. And I'm not trying to be right here. I'm just feeling vulnerable. I'm feeling like the victim. I keep appealing to you to maybe be a little bit more sensitive to me. So all of that is rooted in virtue. It's rooted in a good longing of her heart, the goodwill that she has. The question she has to ask herself is, how's that being delivered?
Mhm.
The University of Washington said that when women are upset, there are these gestures of contempt. Her eyes darken, the face sours, hand on the hip, the finger comes out, the sigh, the rolling of the eyes. And when estrogen kicks in, the word choice of disrespect and contempt is just automatic. It's just there.
Wow.
It's boom. It's very natural to voice words in disrespectful ways. Now, why does she do that? She's crying out for rescue. She's crying out for understanding.
Mhm.
But again, it comes back to that issue. You cannot use unholy means to achieve worthy ends.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I say to women, why don't you use a different word here? Why don't you just simply say, look, we're upset with each other. You don't help me understand something. I have a need that only you can meet. You have a strength that I need from you right now. How do I
Mhm.
say this in such a way that you don't think my goal here is to dishonor you and disrespect you? I'm needing reassurance right now, but coach me. How can I say this in a way that doesn't dishonor you? You're an honorable man, and I know you'd die for me if I don't kill you first. Word choice is important. So if you ask a particular skill, but see, some women feel that if you use that word honor or skill, you're becoming a doormat. Honor or respect, you're becoming a doormat. Again, many women have locked into these philosophies in the culture, and so they feel like they've got a responsibility not to go in that direction. I wrote a book, Mother and Son, Mother and Son, because I had all these women write me about how they use respect toward their boys and how they connected in a beautiful, intimate way with their sons in a way they never thought was even going to be possible, right? So when I go places and I say, I wrote a book on mother and son, do you know what the first question every woman asks?
Mm.
When are you going to write a father daughter?
Oh.
You see, innocently, women will hijack the conversation because you're defending the feminist team always, rather than taking a look at, hey, wait a minute. Maybe you're not losing power if you say, help me understand how to say this in a respectful, honorable way, because you
Mhm.
don't feel that you're being disrespectful. So
Right.
why should I even acknowledge that I might be when I don't feel that that's my aim? Well, the University of Washington says in a man's world, you're coming across with these gestures of contempt, just as
Mm.
every wife is saying to her husband, can you not come across in a way that sounds harsh? That your tone is so harsh? Well, he could say, I'm not intending to be harsh. That's your issue. Or does he go a
Yeah.
little bit farther and, listen to her heart that just because you don't feel as a man that you're being unloving and harsh and you have you need to hone your tone, as I say. Just because you feel that you're okay doesn't mean that that is okay. And just
Mhm.
as you, as a wife, feel that you're okay, you're trying to do this relationship and he's just making a mountain out of a molehill on this respect thing because he's narcissistic and egotistical, then that comes back to that whole profiling we're doing that's sabotaging the very intimacy that we have in our hearts to experience. Make sense?
Mm. Absolutely, and it reminds me of a moment when my husband and I were trying to unpack a conflict we had walked through and how to not keep getting back to that point of conflict, and I remember he said, "You know, if when you're really upset, if instead of saying, 'You did this,' or blah, blah, blah," he said, "If you could just say, 'You're hurting me,' then instead of it awakening my attack mode, it awakes my protect mode, and I'll respond differently." And I was like, well, that's the best life hack ever. Thank you for telling me 20 years in.
Yes. No, I mean, that's the kind of beautiful thing. You both are doing your homework, trying to figure out. But this is where, again, we have this idea that if we're equal, therefore we should be identical.
Mm.
If we're equal, therefore we should be the same. And if I, as a woman, am feeling a certain way, he should feel the same way. And again, among you gals, you intuitively know that if you're venting, like your sisters, even I had this medical doctor, female, she had these daughters, and she said I would intentionally provoke them, and we would get into this cat, but I knew that she needed to get it out, and then we sat on the bed with our legs crossed, and we talked for the next half hour, getting all of that out, right? And,
Mhm.
and every woman knows after that, it's just a release, or the release that comes if the husband just says, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? I was being interviewed on a national syndicated program, and I was saying if a man would just turn to his wife humbly and say, honey, will you forgive me? I'm sorry, a woman's spirit will soften. The interviewer was on the couch. We were both on couches, and she literally goes on the floor. She said, I'm softening. I'm falling apart right now. She went right,
Oh.
we went crazy because she said, just the power of that. So I
Yeah.
say, men, if you would just understand how to approach her, she's going
Mhm.
to soften. And so too, if ladies, you understand. Now, in the case of your husband, if just a little change, I'm
Uh-huh.
feeling vulnerable. You have a strength that I need. This is hurting me. I don't want to be hurt. I know your intent isn't to hurt me, but I'm vulnerable around you at times. Can you
Mhm.
help me here? That does awaken in the man a willingness to move towards you, to soften and connect. And so,
Yeah.
what happens when the man doesn't soften and connect? We say he's narcissistic, egotistical, and mean spirited. No, maybe it's because I'm just delivering in a way that's not appealing to him. Just as a man who's harsh and angry with his wife says, well, she's got issues. She never listens to me. No,
Mhm.
you're a harsh, angry dude. Soften up. You're not going to lose your power here. And so my challenge is for each of us to step back and
Mhm.
take a look that maybe we're doing things to sabotage the very intimacy we long for. But if we're not
Mhm.
teachable, and if people, women have said, "Hey, I've been right for 30 years, and I'm not going to admit I'm wrong now."
Oh. That's brutal. But I have 4 boys, and I am always
Ah,
thinking as
okay,
a
there you go.
mother, yeah, and
There
they're
you go.
teenagers, they're 13 to 19 right now, and I'm always thinking in terms of, how do I prepare my boys to be kind, understanding husbands? I'm very aware I have them for a short period, and she's gotta deal with them for the rest of their life, so
Right, right.
what are some things that mothers of boys can teach their sons in order to help cultivate husbands that feel safe to their wives
Well,
emotionally?
yeah, I wrote a whole book called Mother and Son, as we referenced
Yeah.
earlier. But this would be, I think, an insight. There, one of the stories I tell where a young teenage boy, like 16, was to write on his what he wanted on his tombstone,
Mhm.
and he wrote, "Here lies an honorable man." Right?
Uh-huh.
His mother said, "No, no, 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 no. That's not what. Here lies a loving man."
Mm.
See what she was doing?
Mhm. Putting it in her language.
That's correct. And there's nothing wrong. As I say, neither are wrong, just different shades of right. But she
Mhm.
didn't understand what this boy was saying. And so
Mhm.
one of the appeals, even here, you're saying, I want my, you're already thinking about how how we can get our sons to better treat our daughters. The question is, are we challenging our daughters on how to better treat our sons? But that's a different issue. But one of the appeals you can make to your son is, you're an honorable young man. And if your
Mhm.
dad were gone, particularly this 14, 15-year-old boy, even the 5-year-old boys will do this, protecting mother.
Mhm.
When dad's gone, I know if somebody came in here, you would protect. You're honorable. You
Mhm.
feel his muscle, and say to always grab the boy, and he'll flex. He'll always
Yeah.
flex. And so the why? Because he wants to be strong. He's not trying
Mhm.
to be egotistical. He wants to be. Is he a warrior? Is he capable of doing that? You're an honorable young man. You're an honorable young man. Now I have some things to say to you. How is it that an honorable man could say those unkind things that you just did? Help me understand. Would an
Yeah.
honorable man say unkind things in that particular situation? Coach me. Tell me how that should be stated as an honorable man. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe honorable men speak that way. You see what you're doing? You're
Mhm.
appealing. Same thing with a young girl. You're a loving, caring individual. I don't know of
Yeah.
anybody that cares for people like you do. But what you just said to your mom and dad here, you had this meltdown moment, and out of your mouth came things we didn't even know you knew. Help me understand this.
Yeah.
Help me understand this, and have that conversation by appealing to that deep root within them. But particularly with your boys, try that out. And Jen, I believe it'll be very interesting to see what they do. And even mothers who wrote me, they thought, well, a 5-year-old boy, she was saying, "You're such a loving boy. You're such a loving boy," and he would even say, "I love you, mom," and so forth. But one day she said to her 5-year-old, "You're an honorable young man," and she said his chest raised up, and she said, "How did he even understand the concept of honor?
I know.
How did he even understand it?" But it's there. It
Yeah.
it is there. And so the challenge for mothers is to step back and learn a few vocabulary words that are different than your natural words that you're gonna use toward them in your natural mother. And you need to keep saying that. Be
Yeah.
the woman that you are, but add a few vocabulary words, and it's just so powerful. Women are saying,
That's so good.
"Why didn't anybody tell us this?"
Oh, that's so good. That's so true. In fact, we do something similar, but I use different language for it. I'll adopt honorable because I like that word too. But I always tell them, I'm like, you're a man of God, but
Yeah.
that was not man of God actions. So please help me understand, what were you doing and what were you thinking?
And
So
you could add to that. This is where I say you're an honorable man of God. You're
Mhm.
seeking to be an honorable man, and you
Mhm.
don't wanna shame them, and you're not doing that, but appeal to
Right.
that. I'm in process too. I wanna honor God, and I fail and you fail, but I see you. I believe in you sometimes, I think, more than you believe in yourself,
Yeah.
and I see you as an honorable man of God, but help me understand how that happened. I'm not trying to shame you, because all of us fail. None of us are gonna walk on water, but help me understand that, because I want you to know I believe you, and I'm not saying this to manipulate you. Now, you have to be cautious because sometimes women will say to me, they're always testing out new formulas and new theories to
Uh-huh.
try to get people to behave differently. And there's got to, that comes back to that motivation versus manipulation. There has to be authenticity. You have to, because
Yeah.
otherwise they'll read the room. The kids
Yeah.
will eventually know that's manipulation.
Yeah.
They may not be able to articulate that, but it just doesn't set right. So there has to be a humility in this. There has to be a genuineness in there. There has to be a transparency with our own inadequacies. But
Mhm.
given all that's going down, it's just powerful.
Yeah, that's so it's reminded me of an account from I'm throwing all these stories in too. My husband, for a season, he had gotten a new truck and he would pull my car out of the garage and leave it out, and he'd pull his truck into the garage and he left his truck in the garage because it was new and fancier
Yeah,
and
yeah.
whatever. Anyways, and one day it was raining and my car was in the garage and he was like, "Pull your car out of the garage so I can pull my truck in." And I was
Wow,
like, "It's
wow.
raining." And then so I got very hung up on it because I was like, "Why would my husband send me out into the
Yes,
rain so he
yes.
can put his truck in safe?" I was so stuck on it, and I was like, I think I even cried about it. And he was like, "Why are you so upset?" And I was like, "'Cause my brain can't make sense. If you're a gentleman and you love me and you protect me, why are you sending me and my car into the weather so you can protect yours?" And it became a light bulb for him. He was like, "Oh, I'm not being a gentleman right now." And it literally changed things because he was
Yes.
like, "Wait a second." He suddenly realized I was like, "I can't make sense of this non-gentleman I'm seeing in front of me."
Now that's a beautiful illustration because first of all, I was tracking with you because as guys who say, "What are you doing?" What's your husband's name?
Steven.
Stephen. Stephen, what are you doing? But
Yeah,
what's so
yeah,
beautiful about this is he was not aware,
yeah.
right? It wasn't that he was tracking on a different level. And
Uh-huh.
this is where we have to assume he's got goodwill. That doesn't mean he's got good sense. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, there
And that doesn't
is.
mean because there's goodwill, there's good follow through. But this is a beautiful illustration of how his heart's in the right place. If you
Yeah.
appeal to him as the protector, as your normal, help me understand you're a gentleman. How does this compute? And it's kind of like a light bulb moment comes on for him. It's kind of like
Yeah.
he wasn't tracking. This is where so many people get into huge fights because they didn't do what you did. You were asking the question, you were appealing to his virtue, you were
Mhm.
appealing to his manhood, you were appealing to him being a gentleman. All of that is the what we call the deposits. You were
Mhm.
making deposits positively in his spirit, so then you could make the withdrawal. People are making withdrawals all the time without making deposits, and then they wonder why the relationship is emotionally bankrupt.
Mhm.
You can't do it that way. So,
Yeah.
ladies listening to you need to learn from your example here and also learn from this that your husband's heart was in the right place. He was just
Mhm.
being stupid.
He was being
Right?
very
I mean, it's just
logical,
yeah,
logical and
that's exactly
practical.
right. He was thinking, "I've got a new vehicle, we need to protect that," but the
Mhm.
audacity to have you go out and put I mean, so Stephen would be the first to say, "Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know where my brain was that day," and we need to give men that space here to
Mhm.
make that adjustment rather than just going on social media immediately and condemning that episode because 'cause you'll have 1,000 women jump on and say, "He
Yeah.
is abusive,"
Right. Right. It's true. It's
and
true.
he's not abusive. He's not
Right.
abusive.
Right. So, okay, so I obviously we I love all the different things that you're pulling out, and I myself could ask you 100 questions. Um, Talk more about your book that you're wanting to put out in front of people right now, these 12 light bulb moments, and, what do you feel like is one of the most powerful principles they can get from this book, and then how can they get a hold of this book?
Well, any Amazon, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's going to be out everywhere, and everybody's excited about it. Again, you circling back, I don't have a favorite because I like them all,
Yeah.
and but again, the I end with my response is my responsibility, and Sarah and I have been married 53 years. We have that as part of our axiom, and that's an intimidating statement at first, but it's ultimately freeing and strengthening because here's the deal. I mean, what I want to say is Sarah, your response is your responsibility, okay? And Sarah, my response is your responsibility, okay? I mean, that's what I wanna say. I wanna say you're responsible for all your responses, and you're responsible for my responses, and I know that when you deal with that, I'm happy, but that's not realistic, and so we came to a point, though, where my response is my responsibility, and what's that mean? Sarah can't cause me to be unloving. She reveals my choice to be unloving. She cannot make me disobey the command in Ephesians 5:33 to be unloving.
Yeah.
I have no excuse before the Lord. I'm to trust him, I'm to obey him, I'm to love him, I'm to reverence him. And so Jesus is going to ask me, did you love Sarah? Oh Lord, do you realize how disrespectful that woman? Do you realize how Emerson, was this my command to you? Yes, sir. Did you love and reverence me and love and respect her unto me? She's irrelevant. This is between you and me, Emerson. Okay. So
Mhm.
if we lock onto that as true truth, that we do everything we do as unto Christ, which is what Paul is talking about in Ephesians as well as Colossians, then I have to come to a point where I realize Sarah doesn't cause me to be unloving. She reveals my choice. I liken it this way: a speck of sand in the human eye first causes irritation, then, if not cared for, infection, still not cared for, loss of vision.
Mhm.
That same speck of sand in an oyster causes irritation and concretion and produces what?
Pearl.
That's right. So now, did the sand cause the results in the human eye? Did the sand cause the results in the oyster? Sand is an irritant.
Uh-huh.
It's an irritant. It's revealing the inner properties of the human eye. The sand is an irritant in the oyster.
Yeah.
Okay, so the sand is an irritant. Then I always say at our conferences, can I, can I tell you a secret? And they say, yeah. You're married to an irritant, and that irritant is revealing who you are. And
Mm.
none of us like to hear that. But the minute we come to that revelation, that illumination where, wait a minute, that's intimidating at first, but at a deeper level, I am free. I can love Christ. I can love Sarah. She can't prevent that.
Mhm.
There's nothing she can do to get me to hate her. Now, each person who's bitter toward their spouse isn't going to like to hear this. But the mature Christ follower who's looking at
Mhm.
this says, wow, you mean I am really free? It doesn't mean that we're not gonna be hurt. It doesn't mean we're gonna be unaffected. We're not robots. This isn't mechanical. This isn't something that we have involuntary emotions. We can be sad, we can be discouraged, we can grieve. Jesus was angry, Jesus was upset. So there's a line, be angry and yet do not sin. There's a line, and the conscience is given to know that line. And what I have learned is if I own up to the fact that my response is my responsibility, Sarah doesn't
Mhm.
cause me to be the way I am, she reveals the way I am. Once I locked into that, I became free because until that
Mm.
point, I felt like I was a victim. Felt
Mhm.
like they were always causing me to be the way I am. And I realized one day that's just not the case.
Mm.
And this has been one of those light bulb moments that people will write to us. It has become the axiom in their family. To children, our response is our responsibility. My response is my responsibility. Your response is your responsibility. But that has at first intimidated, but it's led to tremendous liberty. And in
Mhm.
that last chapter, I unpack, well, how do you apply that? How do you do that? What's that mean? Why is that significant? And that would be one of the light bulb moments that Sarah and I, early in our marriage, I think came to that realization. And it's been quite liberating for us because we stopped pointing fingers.
Wow, that's so good. It's so good. Man, you've uncovered some really valuable keys and points here that I feel like those who are listening, if honestly you're going to just want to go get the book and unpack the rest of it, I'm sure you've got some probably really amazing stories woven throughout the book as well. And so go get the book. It's on Amazon. But if your marriage is needing some wisdom, some guidance, some help, hit send, share this episode with a friend, anyone that you know that's married. They're probably going to find this empathetically enjoyable. And they may need the book as well. And so, no doubt, Mr. Emerson has years and years and years and years of experience serving and helping couples and bringing the word of God to them. We're in a time where it's not hard to find people that are going to cheerlead broken thinking. We need people that are going to cheerlead godly thinking. And so, share this episode with a friend. Mr. Emerson, thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Jen.
You guys have a good one. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. Listen, let's stay connected. Come follow me on Instagram at Java with Jen, where you can follow the latest and say hey. It's a really great way to stay in touch. Many of you have also asked how you can support the show. You can make donations through the Anchor app or on Patreon, or of course by sharing, rating, and reviewing on social media and iTunes as well. Your heartfelt feedback always reminds me why I do this. Also, don't miss our merch store where you can get super cool Java with Jen swag and coffee. Find it at javawithjenmerch.com. Until next time, remember, hearing God's voice is simple, and He wants to be a part of your everyday life. See you next week.